Is freezing point a physical property? The freezing point is counted under the category of physical property. All the properties of matter are classified as either physical property or chemical property. As we already mentioned, the freezing point is connected to the physical aspects but not the material composition, so it is a clear and cut physical property of the material. Now, we shall discuss why the freezing point becomes the physical property. How is freezing point a physical property? The freezing point satisfies the primary criterion to be a physical property. Due to the following aspects, the freezing point can be regarded as a physical property of matter, i.e., the number of particles that exist in the substance can be observed to control the freezing point of that substance. The freezing point and the process associated with it will never influence the material composition of the substance. The freezing point does not rely upon the type of the particles. Next, let us focus on the change in a freezing point in the below section. Is change in freezing point a physical property? As the freezing point, change in a freezing point is also a physical property. The change in freezing point is nothing but alteration of the temperature value at which the substance undergoes freezing. This is done by some physical processes such as changing the pressure. Thus, the phenomenon is a material change in the substance, and hence it is a physical property. The next part of the article aims at explaining the reason for the fact that change in freezing point is a physical property. How is a change in freezing point a physical property? Since, throughout the processor changes, the same molecule is observed in the system, it is a physical property. The reason that led to the classification of change in freezing point as physical property is explained elaborately below. The freezing point and change in freezing point can be observed and even measured without changing chemical composition of matter, but there is a physical transformation for sure. Is freezing point considered a colligative property? As a physical property of matter, the freezing point is also a colligative property. The dependence of freezing point on some parameters makes it a colligative property, which is explained briefly as since, similar to the case of vapor pressure, osmotic pressure, boiling point elevation, the concentration of solute molecules or ions control the freezing point and its measurement. It does not rely upon the identity and nature of the solute. The freezing point is regarded as a colligative property. What do you mean by the freezing point depression? The phenomenon that deals with the change in the freezing point of the substance are freezing point depression. The phenomenon of freezing point depression can be defined as follows: the addition of solute to the solvent is proportional to the change in the freezing point. i.e., as you add the solute, the difference in freezing point increases accordingly. Freezing point depression is due to the fact that the freezing point is a physical property and a colligative property and depends on the number of particles or the amount of solute present. Frequently asked questions (FAQs). How can you define the freezing point, a physical property of a substance? The freezing point represents a temperature value. The freezing point of the substance can be defined as follows: at normal atmospheric pressure, the value of the temperature at which liquid transforms into solid is known to be the freezing point of a substance. By what factors does the freezing point of the substance gets affected? Some factors are going to affect the freezing point of a substance. The freezing point of the substance is relatively low or high based on the following factors. What is the method to vary the freezing point of a liquid? The freezing point is affected by both physical and chemical changes. Two of the familiar methods to change the value of the freezing point of a liquid are: chemical approach: when we mix the liquid with another soluble substance, the freezing point of that liquid is seen to decrease. Physical approach: by varying the pressure, it can lower the freezing point. What conditions should a substance satisfy so that freezing can occur in it? There are some conditions imposed on the matter if it has to undergo freezing. For the freezing process to take place. How do you explain the process of freezing? A series of events occur inside the molecule in the phenomenon of freezing. When the substance cools down, the molecules start to slow down or settle down inside the material. Due to cooling, the molecules lack the energy to overcome the force of attraction, so they come closer and arrange themselves in certain fixed positions. During these events, the liquid molecules are transformed into solid crystals. Also, a constant temperature is observed throughout the freezing process in the substance. What do you mean by supercooled liquids? These are unique kinds of liquids known to us. These liquids have some unique characteristics and undergo an unusual process, i.e., supercooled liquids are substances that can stay in solid state and still cool down even after reaching the freezing point. They also have a peculiar quality of crystal formation. They can go further down after their freezing point is reached with retaining the original state. Glass is one of the best examples of supercooled liquids as it is an amorphous solid. Is it true that different liquids can have different freezing points? Yes, experimentally, we can observe that different liquids contain different freezing points. There exists a deciding factor that confirms different freezing points for different liquids. The factor that decides the freezing points of the liquids is the intermolecular force of attraction present inside the substance. Based on the study of nature, all the substances around us are expected to have the same value of the freezing point. But there occurs a deviation in this theory. Do the melting point and freezing points have identical values? The freezing point indeed is the same as that of the melting point. The freezing point and melting point for a given substance have similar values because, in both the process, i.e., melting and freezing, the state change corresponds to the same states known as solid and liquid. One can see that melting and freezing are reverses of each other. Corresponding to the two different conversions of states of matter, the melting and freezing point of the substance are named accordingly. Please visit our website lambdageeks.com for more articles on technology, engineering, mathematics, and various other domains. Scientific calculator and many more other tools.